we decided to sell our property through Martin Gerard. I looked at a couple of kind of local estate agents, and they kind of just seemed like the most sort of trustworthy guys. It was initially a guy called Ben that came around and gave us an estimation, and went with them because they just seemed to be, out of everyone I spoke to, I kind of trusted Martin Gerard. And then from the very beginning, we dealt with Fatmir, who was just great. Was really good with setting everything up, getting through the process. It went super smooth, and the whole sale of the property. Fatmir, especially everyone in the office, was great, but we dealt with Fatmir a lot more, and he made it a super smooth process. Communication with Martin Gerard was great, and I said from the beginning, you can call me, but because of work, I'm either traveling or I'm in meetings or I'm on calls because I either work from home in the office. I'm a bit all over the place. So I said WhatsApp's the best, and he kind of stuck to that unless it was something really urgent. It was all very quick communication. Anytime I had a question, he'd come back as soon as he could. He'd find me little bits of feedback after different viewings. He'd just be really on top of any little bit of communication. If I needed something, if I asked him something, he didn't have the answer, or he was busy, he'd quite often just come back and be like, "Oh, really sorry, I have seen this. I'll go and check it out." And that's one of the things that made me want to go with them. I know that it's a stressful experience, selling a house, and I wanted to make sure that anything that I needed communication-wise, I was going to get, and Fatmir was great for that. And then anytime I needed to call the office about something, there was always someone to pick up the phone. They were always there. So overall, the communication was one of the big reasons that I went with Martin Gerard, and it was one of the reasons I'm glad I did, because they were great. Fatmir specifically, and everyone in Martin Gerard's teams, local knowledge really helped to sell the property. I think it's one of the reasons we chose them. We know they were a relatively big agent, but they were kind of pretty North London centric, which is what we wanted. The location of our flat, although it's amazing, it's not close to a well-known tube. It's a different overground train, which is great, but you need to know where it is and how it works. And I think that really helped, the fact that there's some really great selling points to where we were, but they're not necessarily obvious if you don't know the area. Doesn't have the same name as somewhere a little bit closer, but the fact that they knew where all the local transport links are, where the schools were, where all the local amenities were, because if someone doesn't know the area, they're not going to know. And I think that really helped. The pictures and videos that Martin Gerard created to sell our property were great. The pictures all looked amazing. It made the flat look great, made the flat kind of really appealing. They did a video tour. They did a 3D floor plan. I know when I've been looking at houses, when we bought the house that I'm currently sat in, one of the main reasons is it was marketed really well. So I could have a look, and I got a good idea before I went to visit. And that's what I wanted when I was selling my property, and that's what Martin Gerard provided. Fatmir really kind of gained my trust and worked with me, and I really trusted all the feedback that he gave. And I think part of that was that, after the initial meeting and the first couple of times we spoke, it felt like he was talking to me as I would want to be talked to. It's something that I really appreciate, when someone isn't just generic speak to everyone in the same way. He kind of felt like he tailored his communication to what made sense to me. He communicated in a way that really kind of resounded with me, and I heard it, but I would hear him talking to someone else in a completely different way. And I think that's really good. If you earn that trust by kind of relating to someone, and I could really relate to him, and he was great. And I felt all the feedback, he didn't try and sugarcoat any negative feedback. If there was a viewing that someone didn't like something, he would tell me straight away and be really honest, and maybe give some tips on how to little tweaks to make in the flat and stuff to do. And I think that was great. So I felt like I could really trust him. I felt that Martin Gerard were great value for money. They're kind of middle of the road. They weren't super expensive. They weren't the cheapest out there, but I felt any little things that came up between us and our buyers, Fatmir especially was great at communicating between the two of us, and we didn't really have to negotiate much of the sale. We didn't have to kind of take hits that we didn't want to take. So I felt like they kind of earned every bit of their fee, and I wouldn't hesitate to pay it again. So the three things that impressed me the most about Fatmir and Martin Gerard, one was the communication. It was always really quick, really concise, and everything I needed. Number two was the quality of the marketing. I felt like they were a step above everyone else. And number three were, I think I've already mentioned it, but local knowledge. And that's for the buyers, but also for me. They recommended a solicitor who ended up being great. And that was really useful as well. Fatmir especially went above and beyond in our purchase. He was, when we had a few things slow down with the top of our chain, he was on the phone to the agent above him. He was on the phone to the agent above them, the whole chain. That's not his job. Even after we'd completed, an exchange on our property. He was talking to the other estate agent above to try and finalize a few things that were outside of his role in the top of our chain. He didn't need to do that, and that really helped it, and it made the whole process super smooth. The reason I wanted to do this testimonial for Fatmir was that I think that people often are skeptical about estate agents and are not sure the experience they're going to get. And I couldn't fault the experience I got from Fatmir and the wider Martin Gerard team. It was great, and I want to make sure that people know that that's an experience you can get from estate agents. They don't always get the best reputation, and I can't fault Fatmir and the wider Martin Gerard team. Having worked with Martin Gerard and Fatmir specifically, I wouldn't hesitate to recommend them to anyone selling or buying in an area that they service. Everything they did start to finish was great. It's definitely the best experience I've ever had with an estate agent, so I wouldn't hesitate to recommend them to anyone.